Hi, and welcome to my final presentation video for Computer Science 190D. Today I'm going to go over my final project, which was about synthesizing a theremin. The theremin was one of the first electronic instruments ever invented, and this is what it can sound like. It works by having two antennas that measure the distance between it and the musician's hands, which then control the pitch and volume of the sound oscillator. So my approach was to recreate this in Allolib using the computer mouse. Here you can control the pitch by moving the mouse left and right, and the volume by moving it up and down. Here's an example of Mary Had a Little Lamb. I approximated the sound of a classic theremin by taking the average of a saw wave and a sine wave, with the sine wave offset by 3 Hz. There's also a little bit of vibrato, and I also added a low-pass filter at 800 Hz and a smoothing filter at 900 Hz, which kind of functions as a high-pass filter. Then finally, I set the frequency and amplitude based on the mouse position. Now while this does work, I found that it's much harder to play actual melodies with the mouse than I had expected. Furthermore, I wasn't quite happy with the sound. What makes the theremin have its distinctive sound is the fact that the player creates the vibrato with their hand. Doing this with the mouse can sound alright in isolation, but it makes it even more difficult to play real melodies. So, I decided to apply the knowledge I learned earlier in the quarter about reading MIDI input from a keyboard to make it control the Allolib theremin, in the hopes that it would make it easier to play real melodies. So here's my rendition of Over the Rainbow, which is the melody we heard in the beginning of the video. I've also overlaid the sound of my piano as I'm playing to make the individual notes more easy to make out. I've already written about how to get live MIDI input on the GitHub page, so I won't go into detail about it here. Using the MIDI input, I then have this little dot on the screen that symbolizes where the mouse would have been and what frequency is being played. On the bottom of the screen, you can also see what note that frequency would correlate to. I used linear interpolation to make the transition between notes as smooth as possible and made a rudimentary attack pulse to give the sound more depth and to distinguish between notes. I also used a sine wave to simulate the vibrato that a real player would add by waving their hand. I think that it lacks a lot of the soul that a real theremin player can get out of the instrument, but I think it functions well enough for simple melodies such as Over the Rainbow. And that about wraps up my final project. I learned a lot about music synthesis in this class, as well as working with Allolib. You'll be able to read more details about everything I did on the GitHub. Thank you.